live. Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. I'm one of your co-hosts, Blake Ruffino. Alongside me is my counterpart and co-host, Joe DeLeone. Good evening, good sir. How are you? And let me just stop you right there. There was a commenter that brought in, says that he says, good evening, good sir, to everybody because I tell you that every day. I thought that was pretty funny.
Well, I texted that to you yesterday, and it was actually much cooler than that. He said that apparently he says it to his kids, which like that made me feel pretty cool that like somebody we're influencing, more specifically, you're influencing somebody's life that much that they're saying it to their kids. I don't know, it made me very happy.
I say it to my kids. I say it to Ben all the time.
Even better.
So when I pick up Ben in carpool, my son Ben in carpool every day. He gets in the car. I say, good evening, good sir. How are you? And he goes, Daddy. And I'm like, oh, man, what happened today? But it is funny. But it's great to see that people are tuning in and being being a part of their lives. And we greatly do appreciate that. But good evening, good sir. How are you?
I'm doing terrible, Blake.
Oh, no.
I'm not looking forward to today's show, and I'm not looking forward to this week.
Is it because you think that USC is going to beat Notre Dame?
Blake, I might have to predict an outcome that I don't want to predict. And it really hurts me. I hate picking against my team, and this is a little bit of a teaser. I think I have to pick against my team. I do not feel secure in Notre Dame's footing going up against a team that is the most efficient offense in college football. I do not feel good about that.
The question, though, you brought this up last week, so now I got to be the one to tell you about it. Does USC remedy their travel issues like they did against Illinois? You know,
it's a night game,
that's a question.
It's a night game.
So was Michigan. And USC lined up and ran right over them. And so I just ask, like, when you have a team coming from the West Coast, I mean, the thing, though, is that these West Coast teams have not really had massive issues going into – like, because their timetable's not off. For them, if they go at 6:30, it's like going at 3:30 for them. So I think it's a little bit different.
Yeah, and there was an interview that I listened to last year. It wasn't even football related, and it was with a sleep expert. And they were talking about how oftentimes there was no statistic that matched this, but there's on-field evidence that shows that they had given some sort of stat, but I forget what it was. Oftentimes when you have a West Coast team traveling to play in the East Coast in a late slate,
I remember teams, it was actually an NBA thing that they wind up doing a thing on. Maybe it's the same, but
I don't know if it was the same or not. But it's to that degree of they have an advantage because their body clock, they're playing in the afternoon compared to their opponent. They're playing late at night. So no matter how much you try to mitigate that, it is an advantage. It has not been an advantage recently for USC because Notre Dame has won 6 of the last 7, but it is something certainly worth considering.
It is. I know that, listen, you don't want to pick against your team, but we'll definitely have a conversation as USC and Notre Dame face off against one another in a massive rivalry game. Joe, is this one of the last times that these two teams face off against one another? That's something that, I mean, that we've brought up in the past, but we'll wait and see. Also, Bama versus Tennessee, the third weekend in October. We'll talk about that one as well. Another massive rivalry game will be underway in the SEC. And Georgia and Ole Miss will face off. Can Kirby Smart and the boys get their revenge on Ole Miss from last season?
Yeah, a lot of great games this week. And we're also going to have an opportunity later on this week to talk about Miami playing Louisville. We'll definitely get to the LSU Vandy game. BYU Utah is going to be pretty interesting. And there's also the Arizona State Texas Tech game. But today's slate of games is incredibly compelling because, as we talk about, Blake, the month of October is going to be the biggest domino-creating month. The next couple of weeks are going to completely change our perspective on the sport because a lot of teams that haven't played anybody are now going to get challenged. And a lot of teams that have been challenged are going to utilize that adversity and the way that they've handled it to then set them up for success later on in the year. So there's a lot of things that can be transformed. Injuries, whatever it might be, are going to affect how we look at the teams at the top of college football.
Is Ole Miss legit? They beat LSU and then Georgia. You have to ask the question if they're legit. The Bama-Tennessee game feels like, I don't want to say an eliminator, but then there's no room for error for either one of those two teams that loses.
Yep.
And this is it for Notre Dame. This is it. So USC, I guess, maybe too, but their schedule's favorable enough to where, and listen, I still think UCLA offensively, good Lord, Nico's been exceptional. So there's tough games in there. But Joe, what we talk about all the time, and now going into week 8, the truth serum is coming out. Is Ole Miss legit? Is Georgia still a top dog? Who's going to be kind of more the team that we look at from an eliminated playoff in Tennessee or Alabama? It's a massive week. Oh, and by the way, there's more games that do that in the SEC and Big Ten this week. You got Vandy. What are they? Can they upset LSU? So many different games that you look at that, and you got some Big 12 shuffling this week too. So we'll definitely get into all of those. But Joe, before we get started here, let's talk about our good friends over at FanDuel. If you have the discretionary income, go over to FanDuel. Every episode of Ruffino and Joe is brought to you by our good friends over at FanDuel. If you got that income, let's go have some fun. Let's go place the bets. You can do that over at FanDuel Sportsbook. Download the app today. Go place those parlays, those bets, and let's go have some fun together. You have any thoughts, questions, concerns? You can go over to FanDuel.com/RG for more details. If you need any questions, FanDuel has the most resources to where you can look into it. But Ruffino and Joe is always presented by our good friends over at FanDuel. Everyone, do us a favor, by the way. Hit the like and share to all those groups if you're on Facebook and to all those social media pages. You're watching and listening to us on YouTube. Like, subscribe, notification bell, wherever you listen to podcasts. Rate, review, and subscribe. So, Joe, let's move on here. We're getting out of the James Franklin being fired, and now that all the talk about rolling around Penn State is who is going to replace James Franklin at Penn State. And I got to be real with you. I saw Matt Rule today in his press conference in Nebraska, and boy, did I not feel confident if I'm a Nebraska fan. He did not give me any vote of confidence whatsoever that he would not want to go home. But the question is, does Ruffino and Joe Show know exactly who the next Penn State head coach is going to be?
Look, the Matt Rule thing, I don't disagree that it's okay for us to say that it's possible. I think it's definitely possible. He's a Penn State guy. He was a part of the program. He was I believe a GA at one point with the team. He's been an assistant. He's worked there.
Played there.
I think that we need to recognize, though, that he is in really good footing at Nebraska, and it took him 3 years to reset the culture at Nebraska and his vision.
Mm-hmm.
I would think that his agent is going to be really aggressive, and his comments today kind of make me think he was so open about it that he's trying to motivate Nebraska into giving him a long-term secure deal in order to continue building. And what he did today by making those comments, they either agree to do that or they get pissed off. And if they get pissed off about it, then he just leaves and goes to Penn State. Because then, yeah, he'd obviously be able to get that job pretty quickly. So there's no downside to what he just did. I would think that Nebraska, with their recent string of coaching failures, wouldn't try to match whatever offers on the table for him. I don't know how tied he is. And this was a debate that you and I were having pre-show, is how serious does an alum like Matt Rule take this? How seriously does he take this? Does he actually want to be a part of Penn State, or is he just about climbing the coaching ladder and having a secure job and long-term job security?
Here's what I think about it. Number one, I do think it's his job to lose.
Yeah.
1,000%. Like, I don't see another avenue where they're going to pursue. Who does you got the AD coming out there in the press conference today for Penn State and Kraft, and you have Matt Rule going out to a press conference saying, "Oh man, I love Matt Kraft. I love Pat Kraft." Then you have the AD saying, "Oh man, I love Matt Rule. I've always loved Matt Rule." They have a very strong connection with one another. Bro, do what? Like, do what? So, listen, as someone who's covered multiple college football head coaching carousels, as someone who's been a part of not just baseball, but basketball head coaching searches, Joe, I know what I'm hearing, because these ADs and these coaches are not scholars. With all due respect to them, they get in front of a microphone and just jibber jabber the entire time. Here's the problem with Matt Rule. He's 2-22 against top 25 opponents. What did you get on James Franklin about? Joe, he's 64-57 lifetime as a head coach. Now, not all of that. He had to rebuild programs. I understand that. It's like Mario Cristobal in a way. When he took over Miami, he was technically about 500 in his coaching career. He took over FIU, then Oregon, and just a lot of different situations. The numbers don't really tell the story on that. Why'd you fire James Franklin? How in the world can you fire James Franklin with a $50 million buyout and then go get Matt Rule? And, Joe, here's another thing that I would say here. I don't know if there's a coach after the Saban situation that you can go and get in a buyout that is a massive name if you're Penn State. Let me explain. Kirby Smart has a $105 million buyout. Ryan Day's got a $71 million buyout. Kalen DeBoer's got a $61 million buyout. Steve Sarkisian's got a $60 million buyout. Dabo Swinney's at $60 million. Mike Norvell is at $59. Dan Lanning is at $56, along with Curt Cignetti. Hold on. Everybody's saying, oh, man, Curt Cignetti Joey's got a $56.7 million buyout. Brian Kelly's at $53.3. Do you mean to tell me that you're about to spend $100 million not to have James Franklin as your coach? I'm not buying it. So I think that money is going to come into a factor here for guys like Matt Rule, maybe a guy like Matt Campbell. What is Eli Drinkwitz's buyout? So I see a lot of people talking about it. I see people on McAfee today saying Ryan Day's a realistic option. No, he's not. So I get to the situation where, Joe, I do think it's Matt Rule's to lose here. But I do think that there's some other coaches that would be really good hires for Penn State.
Yeah, again, I don't know what happens with Rule. I do think that there's two names that catch my attention the most. Eli Drinkwitz at Missouri. Mm-hmm. I think that Missouri has been a rising program recently, and a lot of it has to do with Eli Drinkwitz. And I would argue that Penn State, as well-resourced as Missouri is, Penn State has a lot more to work with. And I think that you've got a lot more favorable of a path to long-term success. This is the big selling point here for, I think, a lot of these coaches, and why you could realistically see Penn State dip into the SEC to try and steal away someone, because Penn State has favorable scheduling, and as long as they go 10-2, they're going to be a playoff team. So Eli Drinkwitz has these challenges where he's going to be a 9-3 guy as his ceiling at Missouri. Why not break through if you can make Penn State 11-1?
3 guy, Joe. The last 3 years, he's on pace to be a 10-2 guy.
But they've been out of the playoff mix because of circumstances, because their schedule's so hard and whatnot, and they get out recruited in some areas. Why not go somewhere where you can actually lead them to an 11-1 record? I think Eli Drinkwitz would be the best slam dunk hire, because he has success winning these games and contending in close matchups with highly ranked teams, with the gauntlet that he has faced in his career. The other, if we're dipping down a level, Alex Golesh is a Midwestern guy. He's grew up in Ohio, I believe. He has shown that he is one of the biggest up-and-comers in the sport. You talk to anybody in coaching, anybody in administration, they will say that Golesh is the next great coach. He has transformed USF into one of the best G5 programs. So I would think that he needs to be strongly considered, because he is somebody who gets the most out of having very little resources. Those are the two guys that I like the most, two completely different levels. I think that any other name that we bring up is pretty unrealistic. I don't think Cignetti's leaving. I really don't think that he's leaving.
He's not leaving, because he's got a $60+ or $56 million buyout. I'm sorry, they're not doing that. There's just no way to me. I like Golesh. Golesh was the name that I wrote down here, on the top. Would Silverfield leave at Memphis? I do think that there are some coaches that have been at lower programs or at lower programs that make sense. He would be one of them. But, Joe, I'm going to tell you, I got to be real with you. I'm not saying I would hire him. but I'm taking a damn strong look at Dan Mullen. Because Dan Mullen has the track record of playing in big-time games in the SEC. He has multiple SEC championship appearances. And I understand how Florida ended. I get it. It wasn't great. But he's out of coaching for a while in a program that doesn't have resources. Joe, look what he's doing. They're undefeated. The G5 team that I had going to the playoffs, ironically, was UNLV. The things that he did at Mississippi State and Florida, when Florida was going through all of their issues, I think is an interesting look ahead about, hey, have a conversation with him. I don't know if he fits what Penn State is. I don't know if he'll recruit at the level he needs to recruit at. But he sure as hell did some really good things in evaluating in the portal, and he sure as hell did and came to terms with who he is when he took the break and now came back. I don't know if I'd hire him because it's a big risk. But it's also a big risk to fire a guy who's averaging 11 wins, 11.5 wins a season in James Franklin.
The only thing that I would say to that, one, I would like to see how Dan Mullen finishes the year.
Fair.
If they finish the year as one of the top G5 teams in the playoff mix, absolutely. The only thing is it does kind of give me Hugh Freeze vibes for the type of hire. Where Hugh Freeze goes to Liberty and has some success after he failed.
Hugh Freeze never competed for an SEC title, though. Like, I get what you're saying, but at the same time, he's never done that.
Yeah, and I'm just looking at it as in the perspective of just because they've suddenly found G5 success, does it make us feel like all wrongs have been righted? Do we still think that he's a good enough of a recruiter when you're at a program that needs to recruit well?
Well, the reason I bring him up is he's from Pennsylvania. He's a Pennsylvania.
I actually didn't even know that.
He's a Pennsylvania guy. He went to a school in the tri-state New York area. So when I look at Dan Mullen, I say to myself, hey.
Oh, he went to Wagner and he went to Ursinus. Okay, that's interesting.
Yeah, he's a Pennsylvania guy. So I do look at him, and again, I'm not saying to hire him. I'm just bringing up the question, do you take a look at him?
I do think he's worth it because I do think that there is absolutely value in bringing in a coach who has familiarity with the region.
Hugh Freeze thing, Dan Mullen never hired strippers.
So I knew that was going to get brought up. That's not what I'm comparing in the sense.
I know.
You have a guy that was removed for so long, and now we're hoping that he finds. I do think Dan Mullen should get brought up, and if that's the cheap route that you want to go, I would go Dan Mullen. I would go Golesh, and if you want to spend a little bit more money, you go Drinkwitz, and if you want to go crazy, stupid, dumb, try and make a run at Cignetti. That's what the hot board should look like. I don't like the Matt Rule hire, if I'm being completely honest with you.
I don't either, but I got to be real with you. I don't see an avenue where they don't go there.
Yeah.
Matt Rule's going to have to tell him no. You have a sitting AD and a coach going to a press conference the Monday after James Franklin's fired on a Sunday saying, yeah, I love the AD. Yeah, I love Matt Rule.
Well, but part of me kind of thinks it's so out in the open that there's some sort of like gentleman's agreement of like, hey, can you help me get a new contract extension? It seemed, when has that ever happened that it's been that in the public? Maybe I'm being too conspiracy theorist.
Yeah, Saban at Bama. Yeah, I mean, with all due respect, you had the
Matt Rule's not Saban though.
I get it, but Saban wasn't really Saban when he was at the Dolphins. I mean, Joe, they were talking about firing him. I mean, with all due respect, and I love him, but he won a national title at LSU, was about to get fired at Miami. Mm-hmm. And you had the sitting AD at Alabama going to a press conference saying, I'm going all in on Nick Saban.
It's a good point. It's a fair point.
Like, I don't. So, I mean, we've seen it, but like you said, we'll see. I would not hire Matt Rule. I'm not.
Yep.
But you could bring Dylan Raiola with you.
That would be some crazy shit, man. I hope that doesn't happen.
Nebraska would never recover. All right. Let's get moving here. Everyone does us a favor, hit the like and share. Every episode is brought to you by our good friends over at FD Sports Book. Joe, we had a couple of super chats here really quickly. Bug says USC wins by 7. Joe cries an Italian leprechaun.
I hope Ohio State loses this week just because you guys are being mean. Do they have a bye this week?
I do not know.
I don't even know who Ohio State plays this week because they're not playing anybody. Quite literally, they're probably on bye.
Now they're being mean to you, which I'm glad they're stopped being mean to me. Titan says Holy War this week. Yeah, it's going to be a massive week.
I'm excited for that game. Very underrated matchup.
Very, very underrated. All right, Joe, USC versus Notre Dame, a big-time rivalry game going down. USC coming off a massive win versus Michigan. Notre Dame trying to bounce back here after having 2 early losses. Can they find a way to continue to win here and find themselves in the playoffs will be the question that Notre Dame tries to ask. When you preview the game, USC versus Notre Dame, how do you see it going down?
Notre Dame is favored by 9.5 points on FanDuel. Blake, as a Notre Dame guy, as a Notre Dame fan, it pains me to say that I am incredibly nervous about this game because Notre Dame has 2 games this season when they played legit opponents where their secondary could not slow down explosive receivers. They couldn't do it against Mario Craver. They couldn't do it against Casey Concepcion of Texas A&M. They couldn't do it against Malachi Toney and CJ Daniels of Miami. They have improved since then, and there has been optimism on the Notre Dame side. In the last 2 games, they've had 7 turnovers forced and 8 sacks. They're now 11th in takeaways in college football, 34th in sacks in the sport. Their total defense is now ranked in total yards allowed 47th in the country after they were 118th heading into week 4.
Well, from a total yards on NCAA's website, they're 21st.
So that might have been a different stat that I mixed it up with.
Yep.
But they have improved drastically. But Blake, I think that we need to recognize the context of that improvement and why we should just not immediately assume that all sins have been resolved. They have not been completely moved away from.
Oh, excuse me. 60th. I was looking at total offense. Okay. 60th. Sorry.
They're going up again, or they went up against a Boise State team that did not have the bodies up front to contend with Notre Dame's athletes that they have along their line of scrimmage. They went up against an NC State team that could not keep CJ Bailey upright. Those are not challenging matchups. It does establish confidence, and Notre Dame fans should feel better going into this game. But Blake, at the end of the day, USC is the most efficient and explosive offense in college football. There are no ifs, ands, or buts. There is no argument that can be contorted to not fit that narrative. They are number 1 in adjusted EPA per play, number 1 in EPA per dropback, 8th in EPA per rush, and number 2 in offensive havoc rate allowed. They have to be aggressive. They have to go after Maeva. They need to be deliberate about slowing down and tracking and following Makai Lemon. Otherwise, USC absolutely will pull out this upset and get this win.
It's a massive spread over at FanDuel. What do they know that we don't?
I think that they're riding off of the fact that Wayman Jordan's hurt, and I think that Notre Dame's defense improving makes the line a little bit more logical. But yeah, I would take USC to cover. I absolutely would.
So I look at this game and just ask a simple question. What secondary holds up? USC's 100th in the country in passing yards allowed, while Notre Dame's 102nd. And I know Notre Dame went on the road against Arkansas, which Arkansas is a top 10 total offense, and they've done some good things, but it was the end of the Sam Pittman era as we knew it in Arkansas. The question is do you trust the wide receiver room in the play of Jaden Maeva against this secondary of Notre Dame? And I do think that line at FanDuel at 9.5 is so massive because I don't know if they think that USC can go on the road, not only win, but that Notre Dame won't cover by 10. I mean, that's a massive spread. FanDuel's been pretty on these point spreads. But the secondary and the explosiveness that guys like Makai Lemon and Lane and even McCree, even with the fumble last week, what they've been able to generate along with their run game, I got to be honest with you, I don't know if Notre Dame could slow them down either. Problem is that CJ Carr has not been playing bad at all either. And the wide receiver room hasn't been playing bad at all either. And their running game is constantly progressing. Joe, for everything that we've made for Notre Dame offensively, from a scoring offense perspective, they're scoring and averaging 40 points a game on offense. So it's not as if that Notre Dame doesn't have a fighting chance because this USC secondary has also been cheeks. And I mean that with all due respect to both programs, but your secondaries are blowing more coverages than a Pamela Anderson early 2000s video. I mean, it's been god-awful. I mean, you look at both of these secondaries, and when would you ever believe If I would have told you 10 years ago that USC would be in the hundreds in passing yards allowed, along with Notre Dame after what they did last year in their secondary, that they would be in triple digits. The question that I ask is, who do you trust the most? And I start leaning Notre Dame because of the home field advantage, but I don't know if I can trust Chris Ash in that secondary to hold down what might be the best wide receiver in the country in Makai Lemon.
I do think that's a really good point, is that you've got the simple premise of which secondary struggles more. And the reality of this, USC has the better receiver room. As good as Notre Dame's been, Will Pauling's made some big plays. Malachi Fields has made some pretty big plays. KK Smith has emerged and had a couple of nice performances. He had a really nice game this past week against NC State. And then you also have Faison, who's been quite shifty. Eli Raridon's been one of the most reliable tight ends in college football. But you have Makai Lemon, who's going to be a first-round pick this upcoming year, might be a top 15 pick this upcoming year. Statistically is one of the best. If Jacoby Lane hadn't gotten a little banged up, he'd statistically be up there as well. And he is a very rare athlete that presents a difficult challenge, because you're going to probably have to put Leonard Moore. If you're Chris Ash and you're actually smart and you're going to travel Leonard Moore with Makai Lemon, I got to trust Christian Gray or someone else to stick with Jacoby Lane and win in those one-on-one contested spots. It's just a really difficult circumstance for this Notre Dame defense that, as much as they might feel better about themselves, they're going to be really, really pressed. You do bring up a good point. CJ Carr has been awesome, and I've been the biggest advocate for CJ Carr, and I love the way that he is playing. He is the guy who deserves to be brought up as the true elite young quarterback in college football, when everybody was expecting more from all these players that have not really done anything. He is outperforming all the guys in his class at the current moment. But the separation is that Jane Mayava may not be as good of a quarterback to this current point as CJ Carr is. He has the ability, if that he, and by the way, to be clear, USC fans, I'm not saying that CJ Carr is like heads above Jane Mayava. They're playing both at an incredibly high level. Mayava might even be a first-round pick this year. But the thing is, and this happened in the Michigan game, if Mayava throws a pick and he has a bad play, his receivers are so good that they can bail him out. And you have the play where Makai Lemon
really just turns the page, man. Every time he makes a
Seriously.
mistake, it's like he just turns the page.
Seriously. And Lemon had two plays in the Michigan game where he had the really tight one along the sideline, and he had the one in the end zone where he contorts his body and he has tremendous concentration and comes down with it. Both of those plays exemplify that even if Leonard Moore were to cover him and play a good job on him, there's a chance that he still makes good plays. So the nervousness here for Notre Dame fans, it's completely justified. And I agree with you. It does come down to which defense gets home with pressures, which defense turns the ball over, and which team scores off of those turnovers. That will be the definer in this. I think that we're going to get, which is very shocking for this matchup, I think this is going to be a shootout. I think that this is going to be really high scoring.
I could see that. You know, another question I ask here, Joe, is USC's 29th in the country in run defense. And I ask myself the question, with a very powerful and really consistent run game with Notre Dame, has USC faced anybody like this that can run the football? But if I would have told you in week 0 that, Joe, halfway through the season, USC would be in the top 30s of run defense, you would have said, shit, they might be undefeated. I don't know if they faced anybody outside of Michigan that can go downhill on them. And I think they played a lot more physical. As bad as their secondary has been, their front seven's been very physical. And I asked the question, like, when you went up against A&M, okay, and you needed those tough fourth down yards, you, in some instances, weren't able to get them. And it ultimately got you beat. And I do ask the question, can USC, who's been really good at defending the run, I'm not saying stop or you know, even really slow down, but can you contain Love, Williams, everybody? Can you contain them enough? The thing that I look at in this game is, Joe, if USC is that good offensively, you better win time of possession if you're Notre Dame. You better control the game, because what you don't want is three and out, or stalled drive, and you constantly give him Maava, and you're constantly giving USC chances, you better be ready for counter. And Joe, something that I look at when I watch Notre Dame, they like running a wide 9. Okay, meaning how they do things in run defense, they love running a wide 9. They're going to have to change that up this week because the number one thing that you run against a wide 9 is counter. So I do think Notre Dame is going to have to change some things up defensively to help stop and slow down this run game for USC that's also been fantastic this season so far.
I do want to see Notre Dame send a little bit more pressure because – and I think that they've been doing it a little bit more recently because that was why I was so dissatisfied with their performance the first couple of weeks. They're playing on their heels, and you can't do that against this USC team. Notre Dame is going to be without their starting center, Ashton Craig, by the way. From my understanding, he's down with an injury. The one thing that I think still does give Notre Dame an advantage, they do have the advantage on the line of scrimmage with their offensive line, even without Craig, going up against the USC defensive line. As much as they're statistically not giving up very many rushing yards, they're 62nd in the country in EPA per rush allowed. So they're still giving up some pretty big, efficient plays to opposing teams. They played great against Justice Haynes, and they out-physicaled Michigan. But this is a young, new, and also a Michigan team that's been shuffling around their offensive line. Notre Dame has not exactly been doing that and having that same issue. I think Notre Dame is going to, for them to win, as you just said, they're going to need to not get away from Jeremiah Love and Jadarian Price. No matter what happens, they need to just keep coming back to them. That has been a driving force for CJ Carr playing as good as he has because it has opened up lanes because there's a lot of attention at the line of scrimmage because teams don't want to give up big run plays to Price and Love, who are both home run threats when they touch the football. So I think that with Haynes, I believe he got banged up in the Michigan game, why his carry load wasn't very high in that game. I think as Love and Jadarian Price get going, that is going to be a big key. And as you mentioned, the time of possession is something that should 100% be leaned on because if you can't trust your defense, the way that you win a game like that, when you steal a game, a game where you're giving up big points and big plays, is you keep them off the field. Your best defense can be time of possession and winning the middle 8 in the game.
What does FanDuel know that we don't?
I don't trust that line, dude. I do not. And I don't know if that's moved since the Ashton. Actually, I just wrote that down. I don't know if that doesn't move.
Mike Detillier. You've been on WWL Radio in New Orleans a lot.
Yeah.
Mike and them had a stat last year or 2 years ago, whatever it was. Did you know teams lose 85% of the time when their starting center goes out in college football and the NFL?
That does not make me feel good. Why did you have to say that?
I mean, I'm sorry, but well, hey, there's 15% of the 15% chance, I guess. I think it's because they want to see USC, actually go into Notre Dame and win. And look, I does the USC team that showed up against Illinois, and I know that game was at 11 a.m., does that team show up again? You better be ready for counter because they're going to run it all over you. They're going to counter you to death. So,
one thing I'd quickly add: it's supposed to be raining and 50 degrees.
Not good for Notre Dame.
No, not good for USC. If it's raining,
no, not good for Notre Dame.
That's Notre Dame weather right there, man.
Nah, I guess it kind of is 50 degrees and raining. Yuck. I don't know, man. I've gone back and forth in my mind about this one. I don't have a pick on it. I think both quarterbacks have the potential to go off, rain or no rain. I mean, didn't it rain a little bit against A&M and Marcel Reed and them?
Well, in Miami,
right?
too.
I mean, Marcel Reed and the boys still went stupid. So I mean, do you trust Chris Ash? I got to be real with you. I don't.
Oh, I definitely don't, dude. He's 0-2. He is the driving force for their 2 biggest losses. So, no, I do not trust Chris Ash.
Have you gotten better will be the question here. All right. Joe, the third weekend in October, Bama versus Tennessee. The cigars are going to be lit for one of these teams, and wonder who it's going to be. Joe, when you preview and you look at Bama versus Tennessee, how do you see it going down?
Alabama is also a 9.5-point favorite going into this game on FanDuel. Now, I thought this was pretty interesting. Tennessee has not won on the road at Bama since 2003. So there is a lot of pressure on this game. As you said earlier, both of these teams need to win this game because it would create a lot of complications for needing to go unscathed and not having any failures the rest of the year. Blake, to this point, though, one thing that has been the most notable for Alabama that we've talked about, they have been the most rapidly improving team in college football. They have become one of the best pass defenses in college football, only allowing 136.5 yards per game. They have also, to this point, had a ton of big offensive production through the air as Ty Simpson has caught his rhythm. And this is coming into a situation where Tennessee's defense, despite them winning and scoring at least 34 points in 3 of their SEC games, their 3 SEC games this year, they have all been one-possession games. The reason for that, Blake, they are abysmal on defense at the current moment. And it has nothing to do with the talent on the roster. They're just giving up a lot of big plays. 91st in EPA per dropback allowed, 87th in EPA per rush allowed. They are getting torched. Blake, I said this before the Vanderbilt game. I said this before the Missouri game. Both of those teams, Vanderbilt and Missouri, had very similar stats to Tennessee's defense, where it was beyond 80. It was in the bottom half of college football. I said that Alabama's passing attack would overwhelm those defenses because of the rhythm that they're currently in. And even though Alabama did not put up crazy passing yards against Missouri, they still made big plays when they needed to, and they converted when they needed to. Blake, plain and simple, I do not feel good about Tennessee's defense trying to slow down Ty Simpson with all the energy he's got right now.
You know, Tennessee fans would say, well, we don't have McCoy. We don't, our secondary's been banged up.
Which is a fair excuse.
It's a fair excuse, but you got to start talking about the reality of the situation here. I do ask, though, what's the health status of Ryan Williams, who didn't catch a pass versus Missouri? Jam Miller comes out with a concussion. What's his health status? Is he going to be able to go after a week? And I look at this situation and say, if you're just talking about what we've seen from Bama over the last 5 weeks versus what we've seen with Tennessee over the last 5 weeks, you sit there and say to yourself, this Tennessee secondary has been god-awful. They're 121st in the country in passing yards allowed. They're tied for 104th in the country in scoring defense. They have not been good. They're in the bottom half on third down and getting off the field. They're 100th in the country in total defense. The only thing I guess you could say they've really done somewhat okay has been in run defense, but even that is 59th in the country. All that being said, I just ask the question, what is Bama going to look like without the injuries? Or with the injuries potentially. And I don't know if it matters because I do think this secondary is about to get cooked. And I think Bama is a completely different team at home than what they've been on the road. And I said this in the post game or post preview. The Bama team last year goes on the road and finds a way to lose to Missouri. This team's been very good at home. Fantastic to some regards at home. And I don't know if Tennessee, with all of their mishaps defensively, can go in there and get the win unless they play a little bit of what is not their style and they don't go tempo. And they lean on an Alabama defense, Joe, who, by the way, is 93rd in the country in run defense. 93rd. Now, you can say you contained and slowed down Missouri. Fair, but you still gave over. I mean, it's not like Ahmad Hardy and Roberts and Perbula were technically stopped. I felt like when you watch that game, it felt like Missouri felt like that they were down by 4 touchdowns and having to throw the ball all over the place. Tennessee can run the football at a very alarming rate, and they're very physical. That offensive line that was a problem last year is not a problem right now. Joe, I think Lance Hurd is playing at a level, even though he was hated on a lot last year. Joe, he might be an all SEC guy midway through the season. He's projected to be an all SEC left tackle. Can they kind of play a little bit more conservative and lean on a run defense that's been spotty? And if they do, I think that they can definitely be in this game. But you're going to have to slow some things down because your secondary has been so bad. And Ty Simpson's just not the guy that you want to keep giving possessions to keep counteracting you and throwing the football all around on you.
So 2 things. You brought up the Jam Miller concussion situation. I do think that is critical because Alabama's run game started to regain life the minute that he came back, and then now we're losing him again potentially. If he's not in the game, I don't have a ton of faith that they're going to find success running the football. It has been a serious problem for them that when they don't have Miller on the field, they just can't find ways to make things work. One thing about this is it's a bit of a misconception that Tennessee's defense is just overall bad. The secondary health availability issues with Jermon McCoy, who knows if he's ever going to come back? Is this a Cam Rising type of a situation where, hey, he might come back, and then he just never steps on the field unless there's something that I'm missing? Maybe by the time this is published during the week, we find out he's ready to play and we look silly. But the Volunteers this year, they are leading the SEC in sacks, 26. They also are second in takeaways with 11. Alabama has allowed 13 sacks on the year. That is the 4th worst in the SEC. So for them to produce success, and it's also worth noting, though, Alabama has only turned the ball over twice. They've been
Number 1 in the country.
Yes, they have been the best team, and this has been the driving force for their success, the best team at protecting the football, and 2 of those turnovers came in the last 2 weeks. And I don't see that as a trend. I just see that as a circumstance. Blake, the path for – all I was going to add there is that the path for Tennessee to steal this game and win on the road is they got to get those pressures. They got to get after Ty Simpson. They have to take advantage. I got to see Joshua Josephs make a big play and come downhill and to play to his potential of what he's starting to show as a NFL pass rusher. The issue that cost Georgia is that their pass rush was so non-existent that they couldn't get after Simpson, and he had a clean pocket all day. I'm very curious, and this is part of what caused the game to slow down a little bit for Bama in the middle quarters, was when Zion Young and Damon Wilson started to get after Simpson. What happens in this game going up against this pass rush, this defensive line? Does Simpson still play as well? And after the fact, if he does play well, then I feel like we'll be pretty vindicated in our statements that he should win the Heisman if he steps up to the challenge.
Can Joey Aguilar play a clean game?
Yeah.
You know, he's still on pace to have the same amount of interceptions that he had a season ago. And Joe, listen, from my perspective, I get hit a lot on the team that I cover about my quarterback turning the ball over too much. Well, Joey Aguilar does the same thing. And when you keep turning the ball over and you keep giving really good offenses chances, that's why Arkansas is so close. That's why Arkansas game is so close. Had no business being that close. None. But it is. I think that they're going to get after Aguilar. I see Bama as a team that the injury statuses do worry me about this being closer than maybe the experts think. And our friends over at FanDuel say it's at 9.5 for Bama. But Aguilar's got to play a clean game. You know, he came out slinging and punching against Georgia, but this Bama secondary has been pretty damn elite. Joe, they're 3rd in the country in passing yards allowed with 136 pass yards per game. They've done a lot of really good things. Dijon Lee is done some really good things. And I just look at this situation and ask myself, can Aguilar for once play a clean game? Because if you don't and you keep giving Ty Simpson possessions and you keep allowing them to do it, then they're going to find ways to beat you. What worries me about Bama is Jam Miller's status. If I knew that he was playing, I would feel pretty confident that they're going to win this one, but they have not been able to run the football without him, and that would make me a little bit nervous.
I just also would like to add in on the Tennessee side of things for what helps set up their potential. Deshaun Bishop had a phenomenal game against Arkansas, and there's I believe he's a little bit banged up, but his production I think is really crucial for them being having a really solid offensive output in this game. You brought up Aguilar being clean and playing well. I do really think that if we get the version of Aguilar that played in the first half before he had his turnovers against Georgia, Tennessee wins this game. I think that they can. I think that he can go shot for shot. I think he can make a lot of big plays. I think he can set up this Tennessee team to win, but he has to be turnover free. They can't give the ball back up to a short field for Ty Simpson to work with. Otherwise, that is going to be a recipe for disaster, and especially on the road.
I don't think he can. I think people are who they are. And you've shown me nothing. I mean, yes, the first half versus Georgia was great, but you keep turning the ball over, my guy. And Joe, I think people, when people show us who they are, we got to just realize who they are. Now, excuse me. Tennessee's at 22nd in the country in run offense, rushing offense. They got to slow this thing down. I know Bishop, as you said, is a little nicked up, but they got to find a way because there's not a way. I don't think Tennessee can go into Alabama and win without continuously doing what they've been doing in the run game, and this one be close. Mm-hmm. I'm going to take Bama to win. I don't know if I'm going to take them to cover.
Yeah.
But I think that Jam Miller will be back. I do think that they're getting better, and your secondary's been so bad, I think Ty Simpson's able to carve you up in a lot of ways.
Yeah, and we'll see what this line ends up moving, but I agree with you. 9.5 seems pretty big, is a pretty tense rivalry. Tennessee could score points in bunches. They're losing a lot of close games, or they're winning a lot of close games at the moment, which makes me think that they would lose a close game to Alabama. They wouldn't get beaten by 10 points.
Unless that secondary just continues to be complete hot garbage. So,
yeah.
We'll see. All right, Joe, last one here before we get to some Super Chats. Georgia versus Ole Miss. Ole Miss clipped Georgia last year. I wonder if the Dogs are looking for a little bit of revenge at home. Now going up against Ole Miss. Joe, when you look at this game and you preview this game, how do you see things going down?
Blake, we talked about this in the recap of Georgia's win over Auburn. The most important thing, first and foremost, is Georgia has to get after the passer. I mean, they got to get after Trinidad Chambliss. Georgia's a 7.5-point favorite at home. It's a big advantage that they're getting a home game. Trinidad Chambliss is not the quarterback that you want to give time to operate.
Yes.
And we saw this in the LSU game. Even when LSU had a defense that could pressure and disrupt Chambliss, he still found time and created time for himself. Imagine what he's going to do when he does have free space. That, to me, is the biggest fear if you are a Georgia fan coming into this game. But inversely, I do not feel that this Ole Miss team is as good as a lot of people have made them out to be. Their run defense is abysmal, 119th in EPA per rush. And I think that with the rushing struggles that they had against Auburn is a single game circumstance where they struggled. I think that we're going to see the run game start to pick up again for Georgia and their offense be able to put up points in bunches at a much more effective rate. The most important part about all this, I think Kirby, as we've always seen in game-altering, season-altering games where they must win, where they absolutely need to win, they come out with a victory. They got to win this game because the momentum that they get from it propels them into an SEC championship game, potentially. It propels them into the college football playoff. This is a must-game spot for this team, and it's going to all come through them generating production on the ground.
Look, I've seen this Ole Miss team up close and personal, and I agree with you. I don't think that this run defense, this front seven, is a good one at all. What bothered me, what bothered me about LSU's performance against Ole Miss is you got away from the run. You didn't even try to attempt to really run the football the way that you needed to. And Georgia's been very stubborn in trying to run the football. When I look at Georgia and I say to myself, from a rushing offense standpoint, I know that you've been around 185. The Auburn game's a little bit chaotic in the sense of that Auburn ran 40 plays in the first half to your 12. And you came away with a win and a victory against a very tough opponent at home in a rivalry game where Hugh Freeze's job is on the line. This run defense for Ole Miss is abysmal. They're 94th in the country in rushing yards per game allowed at 157.7. I do think that they've been decent in their secondary. Look, scoring defense has not been bad. They're only giving up 20 points a game, 19 points a game. So I look at them, Joe, and say that they've been a very bend but don't break defense. As bad as they've been, they've kind of clamped down in the red zone. It's why they're so good in the red zone defensively from a statistical analysis standpoint. They've been really good in pass coverage. They let everything stay in front of them and try to make tackles, which has propelled them. But I agree with you on this game. If you can't generate pressure versus Trinidad Chambliss, which was a problem for LSU, he's going to run all over you. And I don't really buy in yet that the Washington State thing was as chaotic. I do think that there was a little look ahead and they were able to find a way to win. But I look at this game and say to myself, I know Alabama was able to go into Athens and win. I don't know if Ole Miss can. It's just a strength versus weakness matchup where I think that, man, your run defense has been so bad against a team that will be stubborn and run the football on you over and over and over and over and over and over and over again. Joe, I'm pretty confident in Georgia this week. I do think they're going to knock off Ole Miss. I think they're going to lean on the running game, maybe a little bit too much in situations. And they're going to make Pete Golding's life a living hell when they're unable to stop the run. The thing about Ole Miss offensively against his Georgia defense, Lane will carve you up now. And the secondary has shown that they will give up explosive plays through the air. And Trinidad Chambliss can make those throws. If I'm Georgia, I'm also pretty nervous about my secondary right now and giving up explosive plays.
Yeah, they definitely need to be prepared for just overall, it's going to be troubling trying to handle Chambliss having time to operate. And if he's able to extend plays and find guys later on, and that has been part of the issue where Georgia's secondary has played poorly, not because they're losing reps, it's because they have so much time that they have to cover because no one's getting home. All their pressures have to come off of like CJ Allen type of pressures where he's getting sent. When you're in coverage that long, it's really hard to succeed on a consistent basis. So when you've got this Ole Miss receiving group that does have some speed, after a couple of seconds, yeah, those guys are going to get open. They need to find more ways to manufacture pressure. And this is one of those games kind of in line with what we talked about with Notre Dame. I think that if you're Georgia, knowing the 3 deep, maybe even 4 deep, if we want to be aggressive with all the different guys that they've given touches to with Cash Jones, Chauncey Bones, Nate Frazier, and also Josh McCray, lean on those guys. Lean on them. This should be a game where you come out of it with 30-plus rushing attempts.
Oh, I think that's too low.
So maybe even 40 and run up that time of possession. This is a game where if your defense, and this should be the approach going forward, if you know that your run game could get going, and the Auburn game is not going to be the norm, if you can make that happen, help your defense out by keeping them off the field. Get them rested. Keep them rested as much as possible because at the current moment, the group that's rushing the passer is just not getting it done. And Trinidad Chambliss having time to move and do his thing is only going to create more and more headaches.
Outside of Bama, man, you faced off against some really good offenses. This one's different in the sense of Trinidad can actually run. And your biggest weakness is being able to get after those guys. So I'm with you there. I fully agree. And look, we'll see. We'll see. I'm going to take Georgia to win. I think they do get it done. I think this one's closer than the experts think, though. All right. Oh, go ahead.
I was just going to say, I might even actually take Georgia to cover in this situation. If they can get their run game going, I'd be willing to say that they win by 8 or more.
I'm not there yet because I think Trinidad can do some things where it's like, man, if he does get a late score, I mean, they run the football. I can't get there yet. Maybe by Wednesday I can get there.
We'll see what happens. I'm excited for this, though. It'll be a good game.
I agree. A couple of super chats here. Barnes says, hey, what's good, fellas? Just wanted to show support for the show. Definitely one of my favorite college football podcasts. Thank you so much, bud.
Thank you, Bern. Appreciate you sending in that super chat, and support is always appreciated.
Tell all your friends. Send a YouTube link to all your friends saying this is the best podcast you listen to. We greatly appreciate it. Elk says Tennessee's defense is Rudy Poo. Can't stop anyone. Yeah, they're pretty bad.
They're bad, but again, I think we just got to be – there's a reason why they're bad. Secondary's playing poorly. Their pass rush is pretty good, but we'll see if this is a bounce-back spot for them. I don't think that they're going to bounce back until McCoy's back.
I agree, if he even is back. Their secondary is so bad, man. Reese says, quick shout-out, Texas Tech, only school in the country, top 10 in football and basketball. Wreck them.
That's pretty sick. Florida could have been that. Florida could have been in that conversation, but that wasn't going to happen.
I think Billy and Hugh are the next two gone.
I think that and this is what I tweeted, and I had a couple of people arguing with me on this for some reason. I actually had one person who argued with me on this. The Penn State job is going to cause a lot of dominoes, and I think two of the first dominoes is that Florida and Auburn are going to be motivated to now fire their coaches.
Well, I sent the tweet out today, and I asked in a poll what job's better, and most people thought it was Florida.
I do agree with that, which is now why you don't want somebody you're going to be competing with for candidates to have more time than you.
Yeah. Better be careful here. Matt ruled to Penn State. All right. We'll see y'all tomorrow. Y'all have a great night. Peace.